two reasons why I'm doing this one. Number one, I'm testing out my new mic to see if it's working, and getting a lot of hot reactions on my way too early top 25 poll for college football. So leave something in the comment about if you can hear me okay or not. Give me a thumbs up or say something. Let me know how the sound is. I'm trying to give you all the best sound for these live shows. How's everybody doing tonight? Is my mic working? Is my mic working? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. So, my way too early preseason top 25. The biggest one that I got blowback on was North Carolina. And the main reason for North Carolina was because I had them ranked above Alabama. And I know whenever I say that out loud, it's like, North Carolina above Alabama? Come on, this is Alabama. But when you really look at it, it really makes more sense than you realize. Number one, Alabama is losing a ton off of their offense. And what were they really good at this year? Their offense. Just ate, so I might have burps every once in a while. So even last year, Alabama had a down year. So it is possible, and I just think Alabama's going to have a down year, not a bad year, just a down year. That's why I have them ranked number 5. For Alabama, being ranked number 5 is a down year, and their best asset was their offense this year, and that's what they lost most of this year. So I had a comment from Jim just now saying, "I'm hearing you just fine. Appreciate it. Now tell me why you ranked Texas A&M so low." All right, I'll tell you again why I ranked Texas A&M so low. The reason I ranked them so low is their offense. Their quarterback, Kellen Mond. I know Texas A&M gets decent recruiting. That's one thing that I'll give Jimbo Fisher a lot of credit for. He's recruiting his rear end off over there at College Station. But he's the type of coach that needs more leadership in other words, he needs the talent to build him up. Instead of being the coach to build the talent up, he has to accrue talent to build him up. I mean, case in point, look at Florida State. The only time he did anything good at Florida State was whenever he had a lot of talent built up. Once in a lifetime, Jameis Winston, his quarterback. Since then, he hasn't done anything. So and he can do that. He can recruit to where eventually he does have that equity, and it makes him look like a great coach. But in reality, Jimbo Fisher is not a great coach. He's not. A great coach is a person that can build the talent up consistently. The more consistent you can do it, the better of a coach. But even if you can only do it, once every 3 or 4 years, that's good. With Jimbo Fisher, it's the complete opposite. He has to have that team that happens to have all the talent that's been building up. Seniors, they're all seniors. They're all experienced. They all know what they're doing. And so he needs the talent to build him up as a coach, not vice versa. So that's the biggest issue with Texas A&M is they lose their starting quarterback. They lose half of their offense, half of their defense. Really, the only thing that kept them from being ranked lower for me is they do have running back Isaiah Spiller coming back. He's a pretty good running back. He's not elite, but he's pretty good. And also tight end Weidermeyer. He's pretty good as well. Not elite. So until Jimbo Fisher shows me that he can win consistently at a high level, I'm not going to rank him high year after year. In fact, if you go back and look at Texas A&M's rankings year after year, they're usually overrated. This last year was the one outlier year where they broke through, and that goes back to what I was saying. The talent was building and building and building, and last year was the eclipse of the building of that talent. And then this year he loses half of that, literally half on offense, half on defense. That's why I have Texas A&M ranked so low, but I still have them ranked. So I'm not totally disrespecting them. I'm not saying they're going to fall off a cliff. I'm just saying people are overrating them like they do year after year. And last year wasn't the model, it was the exception. I think this year goes back to the model where maybe they're a top 15 team. That's where Texas A&M usually is. Last year is not where Texas A&M usually is. That was the breakout year. That was the year where everything came together, and they still got hammered by Alabama, but they had a great season. This year they're going to go back to the standard and be maybe a top 15 team. So that's about as concise of an answer I can give you, Jim. Jalen Johnson. Hey, where did you rank us? I came in late, but we just got Justin Ross back, and we are getting all 11 starters back on defense. I ranked Clemson number 3. The only reason I didn't rank Clemson higher was they did lose. Y'all did lose Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, but I like the point that you just made that you get your defense back, and I think the defense will be Clemson's strong suit. This year, the defense was Clemson's weakness. We saw that against Notre Dame, and we definitely saw it against Ohio State. I think DJ Uiagalelei not going to miss a beat. I think that offense, I'm not going to say it's going to take a step backwards, but I will say it will take them a few games to get to the level that they're capable of. They're not going to. Okay, case in point, that first game against Georgia, I have Clemson losing to Georgia in a close game, but that's not a bad thing. I think they lose that first game, and then I think they win the ACC championship, and get into the playoffs. I just think Georgia's going to be really, really good. I have Georgia ranked number 2 in my way too early preseason top 25. And the weird thing about Georgia is they have 9 offensive starters coming back. They're going to probably, in my opinion, Georgia's going to be the best offense in the SEC, not just the SEC East, in the SEC. JT Daniels has said he's coming back this year. He's already made that known. But to go along with him, they have a ton of experienced, talented wide receivers. George Pickens, the best one out of them all, Heisman Trophy contender. Jermaine Burton, Arian Smith, Kyrios Jackson, and then they have a newcomer by the name of Dominic Blaylock. He's highly touted, and they also still have that crazy good tight end Darnell Washington. So Georgia is not going to look like the Georgia that we're used to seeing because they're actually going to be stronger on offense than they are on defense. So yeah, I think Georgia, what's going to happen with Georgia is they're going to beat Clemson in the first game. In a close game, I'm not disrespecting Clemson. They're going to have a lot of talent. It's just it'll take a few games for everybody to be fully clicked, fully chemistry. I'm not saying Clemson's going to be a bad team. They're going to be a great team. I have them making the playoffs. But Georgia is going to be a little more elite than what we're used to seeing, especially on offense. So I have Georgia maybe a 1-loss season, they're in the playoffs. Clemson, 1-loss season, they're in the playoffs. And just now, Jalen Johnson says, so who is your number 1 team and why? So my number 1 team is Oklahoma. And the reason Oklahoma is number 1, they return most of their defense. Now, on offense, this number is going to sound a little low, but it's really not. They return 6 starters on offense, but most of those are non-skilled players. And they do lose Stevenson, their running back, but Kennedy Brooks, who's right up there with Stevenson, he'll be back to fill in that place. You add in quarterback Spencer Rattler, who we saw get better and better throughout the year. I mean, he was on an elite level by the end of the season. So I think Oklahoma, their defense was really good as well. And 8 of those 11 starters will be back. Their offense will be better because Spencer Rattler, he'll be a Heisman Trophy contender. They get Kennedy Brooks back. Most of their playmakers on the outside, as far as their wide receivers, they'll be back. And let's be honest, you have to take into account their schedule. Oklahoma's schedule is just a little bit easier than an SEC schedule. I'm not saying it's like high school or Group of 5 easier or even Pac-12 easier. I mean, Big 12 is a tougher schedule than the Pac-12. I'm not going to lie. Maybe on par with the ACC, maybe a little bit less than the Big 10, but definitely less than the SEC. So you factor that in, and I think Oklahoma is going to be a playoff team next year. Now, I will say the one team in the Big 12 that, well, there's actually 2 teams, but one that's going to be super dangerous, and that's going to be Iowa State. They return pretty much their entire offense. The issue that I have with Iowa State is their defense, and we saw that get exposed at the end of the year against Oklahoma. They did beat Oklahoma at the beginning of the season, but that's when Spencer Rattler was having issues, and he got beat by Kansas State, and Kansas State was not a very good team last year. And that's the other team that's probably not on everybody's radar that I'm thinking will have to be looked out for because now my starting ranking for them is 23rd, which is not that high, but I do think Kansas State has the potential to get to the Big 12 championship. It all depends on that game against Iowa State. I think Oklahoma is number 1. I think Kansas State has the potential to be number 2, but it's going to be between Kansas State and Iowa State. So that 2-3 spot is going to be an either or between Iowa State and Kansas State. And then the 4th spot, I think, is going to be West Virginia. I think Oklahoma State takes a big step backwards. And I think Mike Gundy's job is going to be in jeopardy after the 2021 season. So everybody needs to keep an eye on for that. And you never know. If Tennessee don't pull the trigger with Hugh Freeze, then maybe Oklahoma State gets rid of Mike Gundy and brings in Hugh Freeze. And I think he would be a great fit at Oklahoma State. And that would be a very interesting combination with the Midwest and Hugh Freeze. But, you know, Mississippi, that's not Midwest, but it's pretty close. So the culture wouldn't be, you know, somewhat of a shock for Hugh Freeze. And Oklahoma State's moral standards, they're not low, but they're not like super high up there, like, you know, say an Alabama or Clemson or teams like that. It's you know, they give a little bit more wiggle room. Now he can't pull the crap that he pulled at Ole Miss. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying maybe they would be willing to forgive him more than say like an Alabama or a Clemson or somebody like that. Maybe a Tennessee. Maybe that's why Tennessee hasn't hired him. Maybe their moral compass is not allowing them to do that. I don't know, but we'll see. That's still a big what if because Jeremy Pruitt is he's tanking. He is not doing very well at all at Tennessee. If y'all like the show, if y'all enjoy the show, hit that like button. I always appreciate that. Let me know that you like the show. And if you're new to watching the show, I do videos every single day. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and I promise you, I'll have a video ready for you every day. Sometimes you'll like it, sometimes you won't, but I always give you my honest opinion. I'm not a butt kisser. I don't care what you think about my opinions. I tell you what I see. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it's my opinion. All right, Gabriel 17. Can people see when you look at their page on Facebook? That's a random question. Sometimes it depends. Jalen Johnson. I already read that. Jim, back to Jim. I think top 10 after Jimbo trained under Bobby Bowden. My all-time favorite coach and best coach West Virginia ever had. Let me reread that. Oh, after all. I got you. Okay. So you think Texas A&M is top 10. And then you go on to say, after all, Jimbo trained under Bobby Bowden, my all-time favorite coach, and the best coach West Virginia ever had. I agree with that. And I've let our fan base know, I don't know, probably about 100 times that I wasn't alive at the time, but I'm part of the fan base, so I have to say we ran out probably 2 or 3 national championships whenever we ran out Bobby Bowden. That's something we have to live with every day. So, yeah, I actually agree with you. Bobby Bowden was probably the best coach that West Virginia ever did have. It was right before he was about to have major success there, and our fan base, I'm not gonna lie, our fan base has issues sometimes. I still deal with it on my channel, so it's a love-hate relationship. But they know I love them, but man, they're hard to deal with sometimes. Jim goes on to say, I like Oklahoma, but they will lose to Georgia just like they did a few years ago in the Rose Bowl. That's debatable, but that's not totally wrong. I think it will be in the playoffs if that does happen. I don't think it's going to be in a lower bowl. So I think that would be a good matchup. We'll see. Jalen Johnson, Golden Blue Dude. Where do you think Eric Gilbert will land? Oh my gosh. I can't really make an educated guess on that. I would have to really look into that. That's a good question, man. Very good question. I haven't even heard the latest rumors on him, to be honest with you. So I would literally have to look into that and see, what the trend is looking like right now. All right. Jalen says, yeah, Jim, Oklahoma at number 1. That's wild. I think they're overrated. I mean, I can understand y'all thinking that, but I'm telling you, man, their defense is going to be great. They have an elite defensive coordinator right now, Alex Grinch. He reminds me of Brent Venables, who used to be the defensive coordinator for Oklahoma before Clemson come and grabbed him. So they have the defense figured out. That's not going to be a weakness anymore. And then their offense didn't really lose any key position players. A lot of people throw in that they lost their running back Stevenson, but Kennedy Brooks, he was a 1,000-yard rusher too. So there's not going to be really any drop off anywhere. So I'm trying to figure out why y'all think it's an overrated pick. If you're basing it on this past season, you have to look at the trend throughout the season. At the beginning of the season, Rattler was having issues, but he grew into his position. By the end of the year, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I would have put him up there with Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence. That's how much he improved throughout the season. A lot of people want to focus on the fact that Oklahoma had 2 losses, and one of those losses was to Kansas State. That was at the beginning of the year, whenever he was literally right out of high school. That was like his second or third game. By the end of the season, man, he looked like a seasoned veteran. So that's the reason. I think, number 1, Spencer Rattler, he's going to be a Heisman Trophy contender. Number 2, that defense is legit and will stay legit. And number 3, Kennedy Brooks is almost an even swap for that running back position because Stevenson left. So number 1, I don't see any drop off. And number 2, I actually see growth. And actually, the Big 12 schedule allows for even more growth. It's not like they're going to, face really, really tough competition at the beginning of the season. It's going to allow them to totally have 100% chemistry by the middle of the season. And Oklahoma is going to be a very dangerous team. Same thing was said last year whenever I said last year Iowa State was my sleeper team to make it to the Big 12 championship. What happened? Iowa State made it to the Big 12 championship. And after they lost to Louisiana in that first game, oh, man, I had a lot of people talking crap to me. But I really didn't know that Louisiana was going to be that good. Neither did anybody else. So that actually didn't hurt me all that much. And what happened? Iowa State ended up playing for the Big 12 championship. Did they lose? Yeah, but I didn't predict them to win. I predicted them to make it. So I'm predicting Oklahoma to make the playoffs, and I think they will be one of the best teams in the nation. It's going to be Oklahoma and either Iowa State or Kansas State. Watch out for Kansas State in the Big 12. It just depends on that game against Iowa State. So we'll see about that. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, North Carolina, that's the big thing that I'm getting heat on, specifically ranking North Carolina over Alabama. I have Alabama at number 5. I'm not saying Alabama is falling off a cliff. I'm saying Alabama lost Mac Jones. I'm saying Alabama lost Najee Harris. I'm saying Alabama lost Devontae Smith. I'm saying Alabama lost Jalen Waddle. They're going to slip a few spots. And I do think they grab a loss next year. I don't think they're going to be terrible and they're going to suck. Slight chance they might miss the playoffs. Slight. Just like last year. They had an off year, but even in an off year, they only had 2 losses. That's not terrible. For most teams, that's a great season. For Alabama, that's a terrible season. So I'm thinking they slip a few spots, maybe grab a loss, and maybe grab that 3rd or 4th spot in the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, if you're hitting on all 8 cylinders, you could win the whole thing. A lot of teams have done that. Nate says, "Go Irish. We played Bama better than Ohio State." You played Bama better than an injured Ohio State. Ohio State was missing like 20. Well, I'm not going to say injured, but an unhealthy Ohio State. They were missing like 20 players. Nate, you're not going to like this if you haven't already watched my show, but I actually have, let's see, where do I have them at? I have Notre Dame ranked number 19. They lose pretty much everybody, man. They only have 3 returning starters on offense, including losing Ian Book. Now, they do have the transfer Jack Cohn from Wisconsin. That will keep Notre Dame from falling off a cliff. But I think Notre Dame is in serious danger of going 8-4. But I think they'll be back in 2022 and 2023. It'll be kind of that downswing and then back up. Because man, losing 8 out of 11 on your offense, that's tough. And your offensive line, I think y'all get like 1 or 2 guys back from that great offensive line. You lose half your defense. I know Notre Dame recruits really, really well, but Notre Dame has a really tough schedule next year. It's not going to be a COVID schedule. It's going to be a full schedule if things go the way we expect them to go. So you have to take that into consideration. What we saw this past year from everybody was a shrunken schedule, and next year it's probably not going to be that way. You do get Kyrene Williams. That's going to help, score some points, but there's just way too many questions for me to rank Notre Dame in the top 10. Maybe number 19 is a little brutal, but every time I see that only 3 offensive starters back, I'm like, no, I feel really confident about that 19. Notre Dame could be a top 15 team next year, maybe, but anything higher than that will be a total surprise to me. But 2022, 2023, I think they'll be back, probably get to the playoffs. Let's see. Jalen says they lost Patrick Surtain as well. Bee-hoos. I feel like North Carolina will have the same thing that happened to Texas A&M. That's not a bad comment, not going to lie. Nate says, we got the best defensive coordinator now as well. Yes, you do, but it does matter that offense is going to be a shell of itself. Brian Kelly is known for having a great defense year after year. Last year, probably the best defense he's had since he's been at Notre Dame. But then again, y'all lost 5 starters on the defense as well, and that D-line is going to have trouble getting pressure next year, at least for the first half of the season, because that's where Notre Dame really got hit hard. The secondary won't be as big of a liability, but it's still going to be thin. You'll definitely have to develop some depth back there. That's for sure. Nate says, I don't care what you have us at. It don't matter. Technically, you're right. It really doesn't matter. But I do know my stuff, and I'm usually right. I'm obsessed with college football. Like that. That's the thing that people don't realize. I am obsessed with. It's not me like bragging or being arrogant or whatever. Like it's a sickness. I'm upset. That's why I know what I'm talking about. Not because I'm some great philosopher or my brain is bigger than everybody else's. No, I'm an average dude that's been keeping up with college football for 25 years of my life. And it just so happened the last 5 years of my life, I've started to get contacts within uh, certain sports organizations, certain radio organizations. So it's kind of fed my infatuation and obsession. So, it is what it is. Now, am I wrong sometimes? Yeah, I'm not a freaking robot. I'm not right all the time, but uh I'd say it's a tad more than an educated guess. It's not like 100% truth, like it's going to happen no matter what, but I look at the trends and it's most likely what's going to happen from the research I've done. All right, so Talk's in the house. What's on, man? Man, I got to say that last part of your name. Talk is Pitt. Everybody knows that West Virginia and Pitt is a rivalry, but and I know my West Virginia subscribers, if you're watching, you're probably not going to like me if you don't already know this by now, but I actually get along with Talk is Pitt. Like he's actually one of my best subscribers, and whenever West Virginia and Pitt start this rivalry back up in 2022, we're actually going to try to go to the games together, and we'll talk crap to each other and all that stuff, but we'll try to do it as civil as possible. And I saw an update from one of my West Virginia subscribers saying that they've extended the 2022 and 2023 home and home all the way to 2026. So that's great news. We could never play Pitt too many times. There's no such thing. Jalen says, Nate, bro, you're delusional. We have the best defensive coordinator. Uh-oh. Now we got a back and forth about who's got the best defensive coordinator. Nate says, we also got a true freshman 4-star quarterback who still has to develop. Yeah, you got to take everything into consideration. But, man, DJ Ungalele for Clemson, he looked really good against Notre Dame. The only reason, in my opinion, the main reason that Clemson lost Notre Dame was their defense. Salsky wasn't there, for one thing, and they were missing a couple of other key players on defense. A lot of people blamed it on Trevor Lawrence not being there and all the intangibles. It wasn't that. DJ Ungalele, he did just fine, and the offense wasn't the problem. It was the defense. So I think he'll be fine. He might kind of sneak into the Heisman race towards the end of the year. We'll see. I'm keeping my eye on him. He's a pretty dynamic player. Talk is Pitt says, we got Clemson at home this coming season. That doesn't mean anything because of what Prodigy says right after that. Pitt will not beat Clemson. Yeah, I agree with that. And West Virginia, just so you don't feel totally bad, Talk is Pitt, West Virginia wouldn't beat Clemson as well. No way. But he says, but we only lost 6 people, 3 on offense, 3 on defense. Yeah, Pitt's going to be better. I didn't have them sniffing the top 25, but if they kind of snuck their way up to the top 25 towards the middle or end of the season, it wouldn't totally shock me because they do have a lot of experience. It just depends on how Kenny Pickett does. He has his ups and downs. He had some great games, but then he had some head-scratching games. Nate says, we can just talk about how we beat Clemson once, and people still think Notre Dame was trash. I never said Notre Dame was trash. All I was saying is Clemson wasn't at full strength on defense. I mean, that's a fact. That's not talking trash. That's an actual fact. They weren't full strength. And then whenever they did play Clemson full strength in the ACC championship, what happened? they got beat by 24. And then they go to the playoffs and get smacked around by Alabama. Not saying Notre Dame's trash, though. I'm just saying they weren't elite. Really, in my opinion, it was Alabama and everybody else. But for whatever reason, Clemson definitely had Notre Dame's number for the ACC championship. Talk is Pitt says, how much did Clemson lose as far as talent goes? Well, basically on offense, they lost Amari Rogers, Trevor Lawrence, and Travis Etienne. Defense is where they didn't lose much at all. Their defense is going to be much better this year. I think Brent Venables will have them playing with their pants on fire for sure. But I think they're going to be fine at quarterback with DJ Uiagalelei. It's the running game that I haven't quite figured out because they do lose Travis Etienne. I know they always recruit well, but that's the one area that I'm not 100% sure on. So we'll see how the running game goes. Jalen says, I got DJ winning the Heisman and Justin Ross winning the Bitlinghoff. Well, I don't know about Justin Ross, but DJ winning the Heisman, I mean, for that to happen, number one, Spencer Rattler would have to lose, and I just don't see that happening. I don't. I think it's Spencer's to lose. I think Spencer will win the Heisman. So I don't know about that. Jim says, how do you feel about Auburn next year? They're going to be average at best. That's my opinion. They had to get rid of Gus Malzahn. I think they'll build and get better and better, but right now it's almost like they're starting from scratch. I don't think they're going to be like a cellar dweller or just totally terrible, but I mean, if they get to a bowl, that'll be a success for Auburn this year. If you take into consideration their circumstances. If Auburn gets to a bowl, that will be a successful season for them for this particular year. Jalen says, we really only lose Trevor and Etienne if you really look at it. I mean, that's what I was saying. Amari Rogers, I'll throw him in there. But on offense, yeah, I agree with you. And I think DJ Uiagalelei will fill in for Trevor Lawrence as far as the starting role. I'm not going to say seamlessly, but, I mean, not much decline at all. And that defense is going to be really, really good, much better. Pitt says our offensive line is trash, though. Yeah, y'all got to work on that for sure. Prodigy says, what row do you sit in? I go to every West Virginia game. Yeah, that's supposed to be game. Basket or football. Maybe I can try to find you next time you go. The last time I went to a West Virginia game, I sat in section 129. I think it was row like 12 or 13. And probably it was me and my brother, so I got the owl, so I was in seat 1, 2, and 3. I don't remember if we switched or not, but I know it was in section 129, row 11, I believe. But we don't always sit in the same section. But the last game that we went to, which was not this past year, we didn't get to go. 2019, the Texas game, I sat in section 129. I remember that for sure. Nate says, we play Cincy next year. It will be interesting how that game goes. And if our defense coordinator pulls some players that we're going to Cincy, but they switch to us. Wow. That would be a crazy move. I actually have Cincinnati beating Notre Dame. I have Cincinnati ranked, let's see, number 6. Desmond Ritter came back. Pretty much all their wide receivers are back. Thompson, Jackson, and Tucker. And their biggest loss, this is the situation that Cincinnati's in. Their most devastating loss was they lost their 2 safeties, which can be a big deal. But if that's your biggest problem as far as turnover, you're having a good year. I think Cincinnati will be better than what they were this past year. That's why I have them number 6. I have them ranked above Ohio State and Iowa State. I think Cincinnati is going to be the real deal. We'll see. And here's the thing. If they do what they did this past year, they will have wins over Notre Dame and Indiana. So if they go undefeated, and they get denied, then we have some serious issues with the playoff committee, because they will have the AAC. That's a pretty decent schedule in and of itself, but you add in Notre Dame and Indiana, then big time issues for leaving Cincinnati out if they do that. Talking Spit says, I'm still not over our weird opponents for this season. I know you mentioned that on one of my videos. I agree with you. You want to talk about weird. When West Virginia joined the Big 12, we had to get used to that schedule year after year. That's weird, my friend. Prodigy says, you hear that West Virginia is supposed to play Alabama in 2026. Oh, yeah, I heard that. I think they started talking about that last year. And then we're supposed to, the latest I heard from you, I think, is that we're supposed to play Pitt through 2026 as well. Jalen says, we have Will Shipley. Hopefully he can start. Yeah. All right. Nate, be careful how many Cincy players transfer to us. Oh, man, I like it. Talking Spit says, Golden Blue Dude, I was looking online. Pitt is going to play 4 former Big East teams in the next 5 seasons, including Cincinnati. Why can't West Virginia do that? Like, we're lucky when we get to play a former Big East team. Like, we got to play Virginia Tech at a neutral site. I think it was in Maryland in 2017. And then we get to play Maryland. They're not former Big East, but they are one of our rivals. We get to play them next year. We get to play Pitt for the next 4 or 5 years maybe. So, I mean, yeah, I would enjoy that while you can, because as a West Virginia fan, we play teams that we shouldn't be playing. We shouldn't be in the Big 12. It's weird. Boy says, how do you think West Virginia is going to be able to topple Oklahoma in the 2022 or 2023 in order to win the Big 12? Oh, man. I'm glad you said 2022, because this year, you already know it's not happening with Spencer Rattler. You already know that. So, number one, Spencer Rattler needs to leave, because as long as he's quarterback, West Virginia's not going to beat Oklahoma. 2022, they come back to Morgantown. Well, the first thing is Garrett Green needs to be developed, and our pass defense needs to be a little bit better. And I think we'll be set on linebackers and offensive line. Our head coach Neil Brown, the offensive line, he's recruiting very well. He's recruiting very well at the linebacker position. So I would say stop the run. Believe it or not, against Oklahoma, our biggest issue is stopping the run. And that's even when Oklahoma is a better passing team. Even Kennedy Brooks, he ran all over us. What was that one dude? It was in Morgantown. Dadgummit, I think it started with an A. Anyways, my point is, in order for West Virginia to beat Oklahoma, we have to learn how to stop the run better. Last year, we did do better, but we didn't get to play Oklahoma, so we never got to see the result. We did get stomped by Iowa State, but everybody else we either beat or lost by 2 or 3 points. So, yeah, stopping the run is very, very key in beating Oklahoma. That is a very underrated fact that people don't realize, especially for West Virginia, because when Oklahoma beats us, they run for at least 200 yards. We cannot stop their run game. So, but I haven't seen much of our run defense against Oklahoma under head coach Neil Brown. Our run defense has been better. So we'll see that next year whenever we play them. But not calling for the upset. It's going to be in Norman. They have Spencer Rattler, 8 returning on defense. I have them as my number 1 team. I think they're going to the playoffs. Do not get your hopes up that West Virginia will beat Oklahoma in 2021. It's not going to happen. The talent gap is too far as of right now. Head coach Neil Brown gets our players to play their butts off, but right now the talent gap's too high. So, yeah, 2022, stop the run if we want any chance to beat Oklahoma. Nate says, I was praying we fired Brian and hired Urban. That plan is now gone. Yeah, I mean, I understand why you would say Brian Kelly's not a bad coach, but I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of people don't realize that Urban Meyer's dream job is Notre Dame. You are correct, sir, in saying that. So, but you can't. I guess my point is, don't get like really, really mad at that because you still have a good coach. I agree. Urban Meyer is a better coach, but a lot of people, trust me, a lot of people would take Brian Kelly off your hands. A lot of good teams would. So don't get too upset about it because with Urban Meyer, it's more about winning the sweepstakes, and that would be a very big financial hit for Notre Dame. They would have to pay off an enormous payout to Brian Kelly, and then turn around and owe Urban Meyer a massive contract. So the timing was just not there. If it was in a contract year and the contract was running out, then yes, I would be super mad that they didn't make a move. But given the situation, given that Brian Kelly is a good coach, then it's fine, dude. You'll be fine. Trust me. Just because I'm saying Notre Dame's going to have a down year this year doesn't mean that it's, woe is me, Notre Dame's going down the toilet. No, it's just going to be a slight, just one of the valleys, and then you'll be back up the next year. Just back up from the cliff. You're good. Imagine if we were still in the Big East, we would dominate, says Prodigy. Yeah, I mean, the Big East is almost nothing now. It's crap. Jim says a win over Indiana is a so what? All it means is you might be able to beat Wake Forest, Vanderbilt, Kansas. I actually like that comment because that means you're actually agreeing with me because I said that I don't even have Indiana in my top 25, but in real life, Indiana's going to be ranked. So the thing is, they don't go by my opinion. They go by the rankings. So if Cincinnati beats Indiana, probably a top 15 Indiana, that's going to be considered a good win. So that it's all about perception. And in my perception, Indiana's not a top 25 team this year. I think they're going to get exposed, and I do think they'll go to a bowl, but I'm thinking 6-6, 7-5. They're going to play a lot more good teams than they did this year, and that defense is going to get trucked. But it will be a good win for Cincinnati, and so will Notre Dame. Jalen says, wait, so chat, please let me know who's going to be a better receiver than Justin Ross this year because y'all are crazy. That's a good question, actually. Because, Devontae Smith, he's going to be gone. Jalen Waddle, he's going to be gone. Yeah, we might have to dig into our own teams and see if we can figure out a receiver that can top Justin Ross. But I don't think he's like the elite of the elite. He's really, really good. But as far as that, I'm not going to lie, you caught me off guard on that one. That's a good question. Prodigy says no one in West Virginia, that's for sure. Yep, they took the words right out of my mouth. Talking Spit said, can't wait for the return of the Backyard Brawl. That was the game we all need back. Yes, sanity and normality. Hopefully it will bring that back. Nate says, our coach is trash. We a big effing game. What? What? No, I don't agree with that. No. No, you don't have a trash coach. I like your coach. I just think that Notre Dame isn't at the level of being consistent every year. I think they're very good. Maybe, I don't know, 2 out of 4 years, maybe 2 out of 3 years, and they have a down year. I don't know. They're not at Alabama or Clemson level, but they're really, really good. And a lot of teams would be happy to be in position Notre Dame is. Talking Spit says, if West Virginia was still in the Big East, they would be a top 5. The Bearcats are better than both Pitt and West Virginia. He's speaking the truth. Cincinnati is better than Pitt and West Virginia. That is a fact. Think about that, because Cincinnati used to be in the Big East along with Pitt, along with West Virginia, and they were kind of in the middle, up and coming. They've passed us, y'all. Cincinnati is up here, and we're like right here. We got some catching up to do. Man, that is a mind blower. I have never thought of it that way. That's crazy. Cincinnati, saying it out loud. Think about that. Cincinnati is better than Pitt and West Virginia and Virginia Tech and Syracuse and Miami. They're better than the rest of the Big East back in the day. Rutgers, who used to be good in the Big East, remember that? Rutgers was actually really good, and Greg Schiano is back at Rutgers, and he's bringing them back. But Cincinnati is better than all of those, better than Louisville. That is amazing when you really sit down and think about it. They were really good in the Big. Cincinnati was really good in the Big East, but they weren't head and shoulders better than everybody like they are right now. It's really insane to think about that. I mean, okay, Cincinnati, better than, here we go, West Virginia, Pitt, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Boston College, Miami. Pretty much the entire Big East. That was back in the day. Wow. Great comment. Love it. I'm about to get off here, guys. It's kind of getting late. But Jim says Georgia versus Clemson in the season opener for both. Who wins and why? I got Georgia, and it's not because I think Georgia is going to be like a super better team than Clemson. I think Clemson is a there'll be a young team as far as replacing Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, and Georgia's offense will be the best offense in the SEC. They'll kind of be reminiscent of what Alabama and LSU, like, I think there's a trend going on in the SEC. I really do. And I think LSU started it. LSU and then Alabama this year. Next year, it's going to be Georgia. Mark it down. JT Daniels has already said he's going to be back. And then you have all those wide receivers led by George Pickens and that tight end Darnell Washington. Great run game as usual. Didn't lose much on defense. Georgia is going to be elite. And Clemson, it's going to be a good game, though, because Clemson's defense is going to have a lot of experience, and I think it will be their strength for next year. Even whenever the chemistry does come together, I still think the defense will be the key for Clemson's success. DG Ungalele, he's going to be a great quarterback. I just think they're going to be a little too young for Georgia in that first game. It's going to be close. It's going to be a great game, but I think Georgia kicks a field goal and beats Clemson and goes on to make the playoffs, and Clemson goes on to make the playoffs. And there's your 2-3 matchup in the playoffs, and Clemson could get their revenge in the playoffs. So if I'm a Clemson fan, I'm okay with that scenario. Clemson getting beat by Georgia in game 1 and then getting to the playoffs and beating Georgia in game 2. That's okay, and I think that's exactly how it's going to go down. I think the seedings could be something like this. I think 1 could be Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma definitely has the potential to go undefeated. I think 2 will be Georgia. I think they'll have maybe 1 loss. They might go undefeated depending on how good Alabama is. And then Clemson will have that 1 loss. I have them as the 3 seed. And then I think Alabama will have a down year, but I still think they sneak in as the 4 seed. But Cincinnati, if they run the table, here's the formula, guys. If Cincinnati runs the table, they'll have a win over Notre Dame and Indiana. My opinion of Indiana doesn't matter. Indiana will be ranked when Cincinnati beats them, because I do think Cincinnati will beat them. So that will be some great wins for Indiana. Plus the AAC schedule will be really good too, because I think UCF is a ranked team. I have them ranked number 22. Dylan Gabriel, he'll be back. Memphis, I have them right on the edge of being ranked. So they're going to have some good wins over teams in the AAC as well. So the perfect formula that I'm talking about is having more quality wins against Notre Dame and Indiana, and the fact that I think that Alabama is going to have a down year. Not like this terrible, what's going on in Alabama. They're just going to they lose a lot of people. And I just think they're going to have a down year, and it could be the perfect recipe for Cincinnati to get in if they run the table. So that's something to keep an eye on for that. And right as I said that, Mike says Cincinnati is not beating Notre Dame. I'm calling it. Cincinnati does beat Notre Dame. Cincinnati is the better team than Notre Dame this year. And it all depends on how Alabama does if Cincinnati can sneak into the playoffs. If Alabama can grab 2 losses, that's the ticket that Cincinnati needs to get into the playoffs. And I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to be terrible this year. I just think it's going to be their down year because they lose a ton on offense. Kyren Williams will give them a nice running game, but besides that, they're going to struggle on offense, and their offense is never their strength anyways. This year it's going to be even more tougher because they're losing a ton of experience, and that's what Brian Kelly relies on a lot. He likes experience over talent as far as super talented or super experienced. I mean, you can't have a bum that's experienced playing. That's not what I'm saying, but like a newcomer that's experience over experience that has some talent but just not as much talent. Brian Kelly prefers the experience, and there's going to be a little bit of drop off on that. I think Brian Kelly needs to change a little bit of how he recruits because he recruits more defensively, high level, and line of scrimmage, which is good, but you need high level skill players to win a national championship because what have we seen at Notre Dame? We've seen them have good, even great seasons under his system, get to the playoffs, but then what happens when they get to the playoffs? They get destroyed because they never have those one or two elite players that they can depend on for massive plays. Because whenever you're having an entire season, you can rely on really, really good players coming together. But when you play the elite of the elite, you need to know that you have those one or two elite players that you can lean back on saying, if some of these other players are having a bad game or you're outmatched in a certain area, you have this elite player that you can rely on to keep you from getting blown out. And that's just a fact. And right now, Notre Dame is not recruiting in a fashion to where they can get like a super elite talent and develop that talent into something they can rely on as far as if the rest of, that group, whether it's wide receiver, running back, linebacker, whatever that group is, the others are having maybe a down game and he puts them on the back of their shoulders and carries that group. Notre Dame hasn't been able to recruit like that. So that's the one knock on Brian Kelly that I would say is his recruiting. He needs to get more elite players in skill position. But other than that, I do think he's a good coach, and I do think he's doing a good job. But if he wants to win a national championship, that's what he needs to do. All right, guys, so I'm going to get off here. It's getting a little late. I appreciate everybody jumping on and watching. I appreciate all the comments. Love the feedback. I just give you my honesty. Doesn't mean I'm right. I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. I just give you my honesty and my honest opinion. So this seems like a very interesting, engaging conversation. So I'll do another live on this because this is a great conversation to have. Like the way too early preseason top 25 is one of the best conversation starters in all of sports, and I love it. So we'll do it again. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Let me know you like the stream. And if this is the first time you're checking out the show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I do videos every single day, and not going to guarantee you're going to like every single one, but I guarantee you I will do my best to entertain you and give you the best of my knowledge. So I'm going to get off here, and I hope y'all have a good night, and we'll see you on my next stream.